Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas. Their ongoing study in the future of theology, essays to honor Jürgen Moltmann. Edited by Volf and published in 1996 by Erdmans. We've got a pretty good lesson here because we're going to take a look at the topic of semiotics. And semiotics is the study of the sign process, the process of forming and constructing signs, which is a way of describing phenomenology, but emphasizing signs and ideas. So it's a lesson in semiotics, and it is Volf's own essay, and it is probably the thematic essay for the entire book. It really does encapsulate the theme for the entire collection of essays, I believe. And I have combined two essays here, so the block 1 and 2 will be Volf, and block 3 will be Charry. Let's begin with block 1. Let's take a look at the theology of sign process. Theological methodology has a major impact on any theological project. There is a need to absorb the universe into the biblical world. What does it mean to absorb the universe into the biblical world? How do you absorb the world? It begins by stating that we need to negate conformity to culture. We cannot just translate biblical concepts into social concepts, as is the case with liberalism or liberal theology. Instead, we redescribe social concepts through the lens of biblical categories, through the semiotic signs or concepts that we form for biblical categories. This is the correct postmodern position, says Volf. So note 3, speaking theologically and absorbing the world, equals the task of redescription. Biblical text needs to absorb world, take it into itself, and then redescribe it, which will preserve Christian identity, but redescribe social concepts. Let's take a look at note 4 here. The task of redescribing social historical concepts. Redescription can become ambiguous because the self exists and is situated in the very culture that the self is attempting to redescribe. We are in the culture, but we are not of the culture. To be a Christian is to inhabit a culture in a specific way, by relating to various aspects of culture as either accepted or needing reformation, redefinition, and viewing the world through the lens of Scripture. The Christian signs we acquire create for the self a mode of seeing. We construct them together into a sign framework of meaning, or a sign model. And that sign model becomes our lens through which we view the world, and the sign model is situated, as we know, we've discussed it before, but it's in that realm of positing. It's in that realm of the internal externality. It's that hinge moment between subjectivity and objectivity. That is where we position this sign framework of meaning. Now we get to the topic here in note 6, the role of the sign model, semiotics. However, the self is also affected by the political common sense model. Therefore, the Christian sign model is called up in moments, in key significant moments. These two models crisscross each other within the self, the Christian sign model and the common sense model. or the sensate model. Therefore, we're looking at a dialectic between the religious and the non-religious sign model. Does the religious always absorb the non-religious? No, these models actually crisscross within the self. Because we are never completely dislodged from our sensate dwelling place. We are never completely detached. So crisscrossing sign models. The linguistic framework mediates between subjectivity and objectivity within that realm of positing. It affects both liturgy and it affects praxis. And remember, I'll define praxis for you again. Praxis is action and reflection in a particular historical situation. Praxis is action and reflection in a particular historical situation. The self internalizes the language of Christ. But God relates to us in other ways beyond concept as well, through the concrete political life, the concrete political environment. Linguistic system must be considered along with political force. How does semiotic system create its own vitality? That takes us to Block 1, Note 10. Linguistic system and political force equals semiotic vitality. Again, semiotics is the study of sign process. Religion is a medium through which one moves. But what about the propositional mode of religion? Asked Volf. The propositions of truth. Propositions are, after all, the fiber of belief. A structure of true propositions is to be posited. In other words, a sign system is the positing of an anticipated world. It's an eschatological positing that we would like to inhabit. But descriptively, this model could include propositions of truth that are abbreviated within that model. So, aletheia truth is very much a part of the semiotic sign model. So Block 1 gave us a very good look at the realm of positing, that hinge moment between subjectivity and objectivity. But now we go out of the self. We posit the internal externality of the signs for the kingdom that we have gathered and defined. Now we need to go out of the self into the world. That's Block 2. We're going to take a look at the posited world. So under center and system in Block 2, the church posits a conceptual construction of reality, a sign model, inviting the world to inhabit the biblical real world. But society today contains a group of functioning specialized subsystems that resist values outside themselves. So Volf describes society in Note 2 as a society without a holistic center. A social center no longer exists. However, we have the truth that Christ was crucified outside the gate. The church, being marginalized, should not be our ultimate concern or worry, because from marginal space, we speak our own language. We speak our own language and word, working toward the transformation of the social environment. We're seeking to imprint, the world with the anticipatory sign model we have constructed. So Note 3, biblical, real world, and society without center equals the church's transformation of environment. The transformative work of the church in transformation of environment. The church enters into dialogue with the following other languages: science, psychology, civil law, political activity, and it will de-emphasize the stability of our own sign model and keep it open to revision, open to adaptability. our sign model is always refined. We've discussed it before, but it's always refined in return moment. Anytime you are involved in the praxis of mission, return out of praxis mission will involve a return moment of further discovery of aletheia truth, which will be internalized, and it will cause us to revise our sign model. So note 4, sign model is open to adaptability. Christian faith is for all times and all places. Moltmann said theology has one problem, God. Theology takes place in the open wound of God's life, springing from the divine passion, out of God's love for life, experienced as life-giving spirit. So we are involved in the concrete world in the dialectic of life-giving spirit. Christian life is tensioned between God's delight and God's pain. The horizon of theology is the coming reign of God, the Advent, the coming reign of God in Advent. The coming reign of God. Theology must become public theology. It doesn't remain in the theoretical. It is praxis-based, always taking place within a given culture. We posit a different set of relations concerning power. From the margins, the church addresses the world with its flexible, revisable, critical reflection sign model in light of the truth of the coming reign of God. That summary statement is exactly the point Volf is making here, and it is the thematic summary statement for the entire collection of essays. Let's take a look at that again. We posit a different set of relations concerning power from the marginal space, and we address the world with our flexible, critical, reflective sign model in light of the aletheia truth of the coming reign of God. So block 1 and 2, the essay by Volf, gives us a look at semiotics, a phenomenology of semiotics. I do want to offer one clarification here. Moltmann certainly did give us a phenomenology, an eschatological phenomenology involving an ontological view of the Trinity. However, Moltmann's phenomenology is phenomenology of parable, which means it's a phenomenology of interacting subjects, not a phenomenology of interacting ideas. Moltmann goes beyond a phenomenology of ideas. He gave us a phenomenology of the triune living God. So for Moltmann, it's more than semiotics, but it certainly is true. Volf is correct. Moltmann does teach semiotics and sign formation, but he doesn't leave it there, because he has told us before that he posits a phenomenology of parable. He posits a phenomenology of parable. That means it's a phenomenology of interacting subjects which reveals a deeper apocalyptic truth, hidden truth. So, yes, Moltmann did teach semiotics. He did teach sign formation. But he also taught phenomenology of parable, phenomenology of interacting subjects, the ontological trinity. So block 1 and 2 gave us an excellent essay by Volf. We're going to move on to block 3 and look at Charry's essay on a time of change. The church is a transcultural community ordered toward the adoration of God. But the academic church is ordered toward the logic of doctrine in our postmodern culture. And it posits an autonomous self, and it posits a manipulation of ideas. It is involved with linguistics rather than pastoral theology, pastoral adoration. Charry calls theology, authentic theology should be pastoral adoration theology. But his criticism is that the postmodern era has created an academic church of being completely entrenched in linguistics, overly entrenched in linguistics. So note 2, the academic community employs intellect for the correction of tradition, which is linguistics. The political faith community identifies social virtue that is inherent in Christian life. That is liberalism. Both models, the linguistic and the liberal, miss the grounding and the pastoral embrace of Christ. They miss pastoral theology, and that is the groundwork that needs to be present, says Charry. So secularism and the need for a model of community. Christianity has an alternative vision of power in order to promote eirene peace. Remember, the Greek eirene means healing of fragmentation, providing a Christian framework for peace, creating a better standard for the education of children. Leftist postmodern liberalism is responsible for the breakdown in culture concerning depth of meaning. We must negate the postmodern academic assault. The church must direct itself to a personal narrative that transcends one's own private circle. The church presence is needed in a society of fragmented morals, helping people to attend to God and all that embraces genuine community by positing both word and praxis. Word and praxis. That is certainly true. Giving the sacraments a communal place, striving to define the nature of Christian identity, addressing both logic of doctrine, we don't ignore it, but also the virtue of divine love, reforming the self through devotion, pastoral devotion, a theology of pastoral devotion. So it's reformation through devotion. And that includes reasoning as a reflective praxis, negating the notion of the autonomous self. Knowledge and devotion must become concrete. They don't remain in the theoretical. So we close out with the statement from the theoretical to the concrete. The self is also formed by experience and tradition and the subsystems of culture. The self must posit ways about knowing and enjoying God, guided by biblical text, taking up the pastoral dimension of faith. Charry or Kari, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name, emphasizes the fact that we must take up a theology of pastoral dimension. And by that he means concrete, praxis-based, which we already know Moltmann certainly took up and did teach. A very praxis-based theology that must transition out of the theoretical, out of the realm of positing, and into the realm of the concrete world. In these two essays we get great teaching on semiotics, and like I say, I agree completely with these two essays, with what's being taught here. The only qualification that I will add, that I've already added, is that Moltmann taught a phenomenology of parable, of interacting subjects, not just interacting ideas. So semiotics is certainly true for Moltmann, and I do agree with the teaching here, but Moltmann did also state that he was positing a phenomenology of interacting subjects, a phenomenology of parable is the way he worded it, a phenomenology of parable. That'll wrap up pages 98 to 127. We'll pick up next time on page 128.